On Anchor, Breaker, Spotify, Radio Public and Pocket Cast, this is Under Review from V Studios. Good day and welcome to Under Review Series 1, Episode 8. We've got to Episode 8 now. It's quite a big milestone. So, hello there, and we'll begin with the headlines, and then after that we're going to read the rest, or maybe, perhaps the rest of Finding Freedom, which is the book that we started last week. Then after that we're going to be discussing whether we should be interfering with foreign affairs. So basically talking about foreign affairs and how we treat them. So as I said, first let's move on to headlines. So, rescue workers have been searching the rubble after the deadly Beirut blast. That's the capital city of Lebanon. More than 100 people are missing after a massive explosion devastated the port area of Beirut. There's been chaos, destruction, and the Pope has asked for prayers to Lebanon. UK has made a serious mistake over virus border policy. A Commons committee says ministers were slow to recognise the risk of importing COVID-19 from Europe. W.H. Smith may cut 1,500 jobs after the sales plant. Lots of high street chains are losing workers like mad recently. And they said the lockdown has really hit their business. Also, schools are encouraged to be the first open and the last to close. And Meghan is allowed to keep her friends' identities secret. A judge has ruled. Anyway, those are headlines for you. We will shortly read the bit of the Finding Freedom by Omid, Scobie and Carolyn Durand. Enjoy. With a plan in place, Harry and Meghan put on big smiles the following day as they chatted to dignitaries at an engagement with the High Commissioner of Canada to the UK. But privately, they were both nervous about what was going to happen. They had seen a draft of what Buckingham Palace had planned to put out, and a statement that would follow theirs, and its lack of warmth was a clear sign that not everyone supported their decision. But there was little time to dwell. Just a few hours after leaving Canada House, a story broke about their plans to stay in Canada. Details were missing, but it was clear that someone within the palace had briefed the newspaper. A royal source absolutely denied the charge, blaming the couple for the leak, because they were frustrated at the palace in the talks that were going on. They wanted to force this decision to break it open. The couple denied this claim. With the news out and media organisations contacting the palace for comment, a statement needed to be issued fast. On January 8th, the couple took to Instagram to share their news with the world. Alongside their announcement, they launched SussexRoyal.com, which was no longer a landing page for their new foundation, but a roadmap of the new working model they hoped to espouse. It offered clarity on their decision to be financially independent, which was not only to have more freedom in their work, but also to remove the tabloids' justification on having access to their lives. The website took everyone, even their communications team, by surprise. Aides and family members knew the couple wanted to step back, but the website, which laid out all the details of their half in, half out model as if it were a done deal, put the Queen in a difficult position. Flustered Buckingham Palace aides ditched their original statement and put out a short media release 15 minutes after the Sussexes released theirs. Discussions with the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are at an early stage. We understand their desire to take a different approach, but these are complicated issues that will take time to work through. The aides, including the Queen's private secretary, Edward Young, were furious. The private officers don't like that type of behaviour, a source familiar with the negotiations said. It is deeply unhealthy and unwelcome. More unsettling, however, was the reaction from the family to the website they had launched. The element of surprise, the blindsiding of the Queen, for the other principals, who are all very mindful of this. Rightfully, it was deeply upsetting, according to a senior member of the household. Several in the family shared that both the Queen and Prince Philip were devastated. The family is very private, and bringing it into the public domain, when they were told not to, hurt the Queen, their source continued. It was laying out what the Sussexes wanted in a statement without consulting Her Majesty first. And she's the head of the institution. The palace scrambled to figure out if all of the requirements in the couple's manifesto could even work logistically, including having the future financial autonomy to work externally. This was very different from the simple idea of spending more time abroad that had originally been presented. There were security and funding issues, tax implications, and visas. How could they legally take on commercial endeavours and still represent the Queen? It was a huge headache, an exasperated aide said. Even a source close to the couple admitted that while Harry and Meghan had put a lot of thought into this immense transition, they could also be impatient and impulsive. They ran hot, in a way, the source said. The reactions in individual moments are definitely not the same. A month, a few weeks down the line. Despite her sadness at the thought of losing the Sussexes as working royals, the Queen could see it was necessary for the couple to completely separate from the institution. No one should be forced into something they don't want to do. But if Harry thought that their public proposal would result in their getting exactly what they wanted, he was sorely mistaken, a senior courtier said. The Queen understood the difficulties they faced, but the rules don't bend for anyone. Buckingham Palace issued a statement stating that a solution to Harry and Meghan's requests would be reached within days, not weeks. After 3 days of discussions between the royal households and government officials, including the Canadian government, the Queen requested that Harry travel up to Sandringham to meet her, Charles and William. At the Sandringham summit, the four of them would sort out the future once and for all. What a source described as a practical, workmanlike approach permeated the room as the royals set out to form a deal. Harry felt as though he and Meghan had long been sidelined by the institution and were not a fundamental part of its future. One didn't have to look further than the family's photos displayed during the Queen's speech on Christmas Day. In the green drawing room at Buckingham Palace, where the Queen delivered her address, viewers glimpsed photos of the Cambridges and their children, Charles and Camilla, Prince Philip, and a black and white image of George VI, struggling with Roman numerals. Noticeably absent was a photo of Harry, Meghan, and their new baby, Archie. Palace sources insisted that the photos were chosen to represent a direct line of succession, but for Harry and Meghan it had been yet another sign that they needed to consider their own path. Charles made it clear to Harry that he and Meghan were very much part of the future for the royal family, despite calls for a slimmed-down monarchy with fewer senior working royals. The Prince of Wales' vision always included Harry as part of a slimmed-down monarchy, a source close to the family shared. His vision included both his sons. William will always be more important than Harry, but that's a fact only because of birthright. Though William had not taken the original news of his brother's plan well, his fate was up to the Queen, and she was very aware that the outcome of the meeting would set the standard for generations to come. Finally, she made it clear that their quasi-royal vision would not work. It was untenable, a palace source said. If Harry and Meghan had been semi-working royals, there would have been no oversight in everything that they did. In the independent sphere, a committee to approve events and deals. When the meeting was over, Harry immediately debriefed Sussex aides before sending a text to Meghan. That evening, the Queen put out a candid and personal statement. My family and I are entirely supportive of Harry and Meghan's desire to create a new life as a young family, a statement read. Although we would have preferred them to remain full-time working members of the royal family, we respect and understand their wish to live a more independent life and a family while remaining a valued part of my family. The official communication also announced that Harry and Meghan no longer wanted to rely on public money during the coming period of transition, during which the couple would live in both Canada and the UK. These are complex matters for my family to resolve, and there is more work to be done, the Queen stated, but I've asked for a final decision to be reached in the coming days. More work was an understatement. Harry spent the next several days holed up in intense meetings and conference calls with top aides from all three royal households, Buckingham Palace, Clarence House, and Kensington Palace, which were led by Charles' private secretary, Clive Alderton. They would have to figure out how much money of their expenses were private rather than subject to tax relief. They've created a complex headache for everyone, an exhausted aide complained on the 5th day of meetings. That'll be about it for Finding Freedom. That's a book by Omid, Scobie and Carolyn Durand. That'll be it for this week. We will continue next week in part 3, reading the rest of the extract, and that will be the last part of it. Now on Under Review, we're going to talk about foreign affairs and how we deal with them in the West. So, for example, treating China's affairs. That's in part 2, the review, which is coming up now. Enjoy. Recently, we have seen increased tension between the West and China. By the West, I mean the UK and the US and perhaps Europe as well, as the UK now begins to join the US-China trade war that has lasted for years, perhaps decades now, since China overtook the US in the size of their economy and the GDP, which we did talk about in the China episode 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago. Also, one of the very recent headlines was that over 100 people were killed and 300,000 left homeless and shell-shocked after a huge explosion happened in Beirut, capital of Lebanon. So obviously we should take these events seriously, shouldn't we? But China has told us to stay out of their affairs, basically telling us not to take them seriously, and, well, maybe just take them seriously, but not exactly directly interfere in their affairs. China's affairs, like those recent ones with Hong Kong and the national security law. This brought along lots of resistance and disagreement between China and the Western world, UK and US, etc. Especially the US, and Donald Trump is quite against China currently. So Donald Trump and the US, and as well as the UK, have been quite keen on reverting this extremely controversial national security law, so much that they have taken almost direct action to save affected. Well, when I say save, I mean, in our view, saving them, like getting them out of this national security law-ridden Hong Kong. So, as you probably heard, they're giving them free British citizenship. So, so much that they've taken almost direct action to save Hong Kong citizens, which are apparently affected. So, my question for you is, should we directly interfere with the dealing of events like these? Because the UK and the US and well-developed countries in the West can be pretty helpful with dealing with these big affairs that are in other countries. We could obviously really help out, like in wars and stuff. We have lots of money. We help developing nations, and that's kind of our responsibility for these nations. I'm not saying China is one of them, but other countries, for example, perhaps Lebanon, maybe. I'm not sure about how rich they are there, but places like India, for example, people who are affected there, we should really be helping. So I think we should be able to. I personally think we should be able to interfere in what's happening in other countries' affairs, but not actually. I don't know. It's hard to put into words. Not really interfere loads with their affairs, not like battling their government exactly, just maybe not trying to say no, don't do security law, just kind of taking it our own way. And I'm not sure, it's hard to put into words, really. But I just think we shouldn't really do it too much and kind of leave them be to do their laws and just make sure our country is running fine and that kind of thing. So my second question for you is, should we just keep to our own affairs rather than peering over other countries' shoulders at their affairs? Because, well, I guess if you take it too far, if you interfere in lots of countries' affairs, you could just not have time for your own affairs. Am I saying the word affairs too much? It's getting annoying. So you would want to, like, instead of trying to tackle COVID in another country, you could focus on your own country and focus on your homeland and trying to clear up COVID at home, which is probably much more important than other countries. Once you've cleared up your homeland, you can go to other countries and help there as well. So those are my two questions for you. I'll just remind you, should we directly interfere with the dealing of events like these, like in China and Lebanon recently, or should we just keep to our own affairs rather than peering over other countries' shoulders, metaphorically, at their affairs? So do take a good think about that. I think it's quite controversial because as we move forward into our developing world, we are getting increasingly closer together as countries in the world. So maybe it's getting more necessary to interfere, or maybe it's not getting as necessary to interfere. It definitely will be getting easier to interfere, but doesn't mean we should. I'd love to hear what you think about that. Should we directly interfere with the dealing of events like these, or should we just keep to our own affairs rather than peering over other countries' shoulders at their affairs? So do take a good think. I hope I have dazzled and wazzled and frazzled or wazzled your brain, if I can actually say a proper word today. And yeah, do take a good think. Very controversial. That'll be about it for this part, and shortly I'll just wrap up and tell you how to submit your opinions and conclude. Do submit your opinions on what we've discussed in this episode. So the second part of the episode was the stuff under review, which we're going to be discussing next week. And we'll be discussing it in the second part of next week. So it's very easy to submit your opinions, and we would love to hear what you think. So firstly, if you want to do it the easier way, go to anchor.fm/underreviewcast. That's Anchor spelled ANCHOR, and under review is spelled UNDERREVIEW. And cast is obviously CAST, in case you need to brush up on your spelling. And also, if you would like to write instead of speak like a senior MP, you may email underreviewcast@gmail.com. That's underreviewcast@gmail.com. Just to round up, repeat those credentials: anchor.fm/underreviewcast and underreviewcast@gmail.com. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Under Review. You just listened to Series 1, Episode 8, with me, Viggo Bryant Frost, your host. And you could be on the credits next week as well if you get your opinions in. Make sure you listen to that short snippet about submitting your opinions. And just a reminder, underreviewcast@gmail.com and anchor.fm/underreviewcast if you want to get those opinions in, because we would love to hear what you think. Just a reminder that like I told you in Series 1, Episode 7, that we will not have the same episodes during the summer, the same kind of episode, because obviously our main contributors are kind of on holiday. Obviously, you could extremely help out by submitting your opinions, as I told you how to do, and getting on the show to increase the length, perhaps, and increase the quality of the episodes, because currently they're not as good. I'm not saying they're really bad, but they're not as good as they would normally be, really. So, yeah, definitely do submit your opinions. Tell us what you think about how we should treat foreign affairs, like what happened in China and Lebanon. And, yeah, that kind of thing, really. Do subscribe /like/follow wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Anchor, Breaker, Spotify, Radio Public Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Overcast, YouTube. And I will see you next week for Series 1, Episode 9. We'll finish off Finding Freedom by Omid, Scobie and Carolyn Durand. Technically is an article from the Times. It was an extract that I found. Anyway, as I said, I'll see you next week. And for now, bye-bye.